But I have to say, I reckon Jan Ullrich is looking very relaxed on the start line this morning, already having got a world title under his belt, and he's going to be a very difficult man to beat, because this is a circuit today for the tough riders.
And if we're going for cockiness, making a real favourite, then we also have to think of Frankie van der Broek. But let's look back to Valkenburg 1 year ago, and this man, after a brilliant road race, coming out a justifiable good winner of the World Championship, Oscar Kammerzind of Switzerland, reliving the great moments for a country that's been without a world champion for an awful long time. And since becoming world champion, Kammerzind only 2 wins under his belt this season. He, of course, went on to win immediately the Tour of Lombardy last year. But he's had a good year. 4th in the Flèche Wallonne, 8th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and 11th in the Tour of Italy. So now he'll look for a good defence of his title, and he knows what it's all about. The field low, Paul, as we rejoin the race here. The sun has now come up. We're a few laps down the road. There has been no attacks at all, just a nice tempo, and not surprisingly, plenty of the squadra in the lead.
All the riders on the start line this morning fielding 12 men. But in fact, the Swiss allowed to field 13 riders because they have the defending champion Oscar Kammerzind in their midst, so therefore they can start him as an extra rider, and that will give them a slight advantage going into the final of this race. Alex Zuller there, riding a pretty good road race so far, but as you can see, very much to the front at the World Championship. Always the French team trying to put the hammer down, trying to keep the race difficult, especially over the summit of the climb.
Well, we've now just started to get a series of attacks here. We're moving on to around 7 laps to go from the finish now, and the pressure has noticeably been applied. Andre Schmil has been in the action as well, but we can tell you that very early on today at the 6th lap, Frankie van der Broek has crashed. His team dropped back for him, including Johan Museo. He's back safely in the pack and seems okay, but one rider out of the race, and rather sadly for the locals, is David Rebellin, because he's crashed and we believe has broken ribs. He's gone to hospital.
You notice a lot of work has been done here as well by the German team. The Germans in a new strip this year wearing blue and white, and in fact a lot of that is really because they're trying to just ride for one man here this afternoon, and that is going to be the sole leader of the team, Jan Ullrich. Taffy now trying to hotten up the pace at the front. Taffy also feels as if he's got very good legs at this end of season.
Well, there's 1 or 2 good ones, as always, on the Italian squad. There's 1 or 2 notables missing, of course, including Marco Pantani, who this time last year was saying how much he wanted to win the world title on this circuit, but having had a very controversial end to his campaign this summer, he's not here. But Taffy seemingly trying to soften things up a little bit now, Paul, because their man on form is Francesco Casagrande, a man out with a doping suspension until the start of the Tour of Switzerland, which he won, and he's having a great end of term.
He certainly is, but at the moment really all of the pressure is being put on by the French and the German team, trying to make this a very difficult course, trying to harden it up at the most difficult part on the course, which is the climb of the Torricelli.
Well, this is the group that has been steadily building, but it's really not getting anywhere at all away from the main field. The big names are still watching from afar and marking each other nicely, as the chase now is beginning to shut it down a little bit. Just about a minute and a half it was over the top of the Torricelli. This is a climb which takes the riders up to 283 metres above sea level. It starts to bite at around the 170 metres level at San Leonardo, and then goes straight up to the top. It's not the steepness of the climb, of course, it's the repetitiveness that one has going over it 16 times, and it does begin to bite.
Well, Andrea Taffy in second position there. That's Ribiera, the Spanish rider, in first position. And this is a pretty serious breakaway. Alex Zuller has managed to get himself up there, as well as Geert van Bont, the Belgian rider. It's interesting to note that Taffy's got into this early breakaway. He feels he's got a great chance of winning here, but what it's done is put a lot of pressure onto the German team, who will have to chase. You can see the Italians in second and third position in the main field there. They're actually riding a defending role at the moment, hoping that the advantage turns towards Taffy.
Looks like Van Bon on the front here for Rabobank. Oh, I shouldn't say that really, because he's for Holland in the World Championship, not for, of course, for his individual team. This is the only time of the year the riders pull on their national team jerseys. Here's the breakdown of that league group, and Zuller was the man that started stirring it up. Taffy spotted it and has gone with him, and this is Andrea Taffy at the back. Remarkable rider, and has developed so much, particularly this last 3 or 4 seasons, as to be a top boy in Italy.
What a great performance by Taffy earlier on in this season, getting that victory in Paris-Roubaix, the race that he loves and the race that he has really dedicated himself to winning over the last 3 seasons. Their advantage now, Phil, over the chasing group is just down to 15 seconds. But interesting to note that the Belgians are riding well here today. They've placed 2 men into this leading group.
And there's the man who has been very active here, Alex Zülle. A remarkable second place on his comeback to the Tour de France, and pushing Lance Armstrong all of the way to his victory in that event, when whenever Lance came out with a stage win, it was Alex Zülle who crossed the line in second place.
And what a different story it might have been if Alex Zülle hadn't lost over 6 minutes on the 3rd or 4th stage over the Passage au Gois, because that really turned the books for Alex Zülle, and that took him out of the race as being a major contender. But he didn't give up, and he fought his way back and came up with 2nd position, which is pretty remarkable when you think of the season that he had the year before and all that involvement with the Festina affair of 1998.
Leon van Bond doing a lot of work here, Paul, to try and shut down this breakaway containing Zülle. The Tifosi, having spent first couple of hours of the coming up to dawn this morning, walking out with little ice buckets up onto the climb, getting in the best position for the day. The town here has been shut down for a week now, and nobody seems to mind at all.
Well, Van Bonn, a former medalist at the World Championship today, doing an awful lot of work, because the Dutch camp really, Phil, today think that Michael Bogaert is going to be the favourite, because this certainly is a course that suits him. The leading group of riders now is starting to splinter under the pressure of Alex Zülle on the front of this group here, and certainly it has turned out to be a very difficult climb. It always is at the World Championships, because it's the pace of the riders that really dictates how difficult the course is going to be. And I have to tell you, this course here, the Torricelli, is certainly proving to be a pretty tough mountain.
Well, David Brylance, a little bit of a surprise, but you've got to take your chance in that leading group for the Belgians. As the 170 riders rolled out this morning, the field has already reduced quite drastically, as riders have peeled off at the pits, as they often do at the World Championships. As a very typical start to a World Championship today, a good tempo, but nobody attacking at all, just rolling around the course, getting the feel of the situation. That's changed a lot now, because there's good tempo, and when riders start this looking around, it means they are waiting for an attack. They're getting very twitchy indeed now. Number 21 there is Gert van Bont from Belgium. We've got 2 riders up in this breakaway just at the minute, being driven on all of the time by a very frisky Alex Zülle.
Zülle obviously trying to put the pressure on, hoping that in fact if there is a reaction, it'll come from the main field behind, and he can stay in the front split over the top of this climb. A great performance by Zülle at the moment, riding a very strong race here at the World Championships. But you can see you may be unlucky for Alex, because he's wearing number 13 today.
And also wearing the new Swiss national team strip there, which is quite attractive, as Ribeira, the Spanish rider, up there, second wheel. Just seeing going through the frame there was Andrea Taffy, and sitting at the back here at the moment is Gert van Bont, riding for the Belgians, but his team is in fact a Dutch team, the Farm Freak Team TVM.
The amazing thing about the elite men's race at the World Championships every year is when you look at the races that precede the World Championships, you see the under-23s, you see the women's races, and they always start off very quickly and then slow down towards the end. But in the men's professional road race, it's always the last couple of laps which prove to be the fastest of the event, and very often the fastest of the whole week on the same course used by everybody else.
Well, this is an interesting move by Zülle. Really, one would put him into the group of probably second favourites today, yet he's gone out so early on to try and break this race up. The way the races have been held this year, there are some surprise results possible. Remember Celestino in the Hughes Classic, jumping away towards the finish and outwitting some big names. So maybe it's a good move to try and get an early group going, because that is a big field still rolling round behind this breakaway group.
There's a small group coming across there. There's Alex Zülle still setting the pace at the front, but it looked very much to me, in fact, if coming up from behind, Michael Bogaert was leading them in the orange strip of Holland. And there's a Swiss rider with him there as well, and they may well have managed to slip away from the rest of the main field. There is a split going clear off the front of the bunch now, and this could be quite important, because some of the big names are moving to the front.
Well, Zuller is looking around here. He's riding with Dave Brylance, but they're all over him now because Bourgault has got across as they come up towards the top of the Torricelli. Yet again, this is a useful-looking group. Well, I was about to say a group, but it looks as though the whole peloton has crossed the gap here. Pascal Richard just passing through our screen as well. A big year for him next year when he has to defend the Olympic Championship in Sydney, assuming, of course, he gets selected by Switzerland.
There you can see that looked as if that was a serious move happening, but everybody very nervous at this stage of the World Championships. Everybody being very attentive, just going through there. Was in fact Jan Ulrich riding very close to the front. I caught a quick glimpse there of Frank Vandenbroek with his blonde hair going through there, but this now is the start of the descent off the Torricelli, and a very rapid descent as well.
Rapid and quite a tricky one too, and you see that the leaders of that group there try to keep the pressure on to see if they can break up this rather big bunch.
Already one or two riders going out of the back because of the pressure on the front of the climb, and all that pressure was being made there by Alex Zuller. Now it's the turn of the Squadra Azzurri, the Italians, to come to the front and try and do something in this event. The Italians have had a pretty successful week with a win in the men's under-23 championship, and what a great performance that was as well. The Italians were looking to win on home soil, and if they could win the big one at the end of the week, the race that we're looking at today, then they would go home a very happy nation.
Well, I think they do need a result here, Paul, because, yeah, you're right about the under-23, but in all the other events this week, they haven't had much luck at all. And to talk to some of the riders, the wrong Italian won the under-23 event. He was a man that broke away early on. They never caught him. But now Andrea Taffi tried to get something going here, and this man reminds me quite often of the retiring Claudio Chiappucci this year, because he's never afraid to attack Andrea Taffi, and he's gone out in front to see just what happens. And here he goes again.
He wants to move. He wants to get into that early breakaway and take the pressure off himself, and then not being forced to play the defensive role. Another Italian getting into the group there as well, Sergio Barbero. Two Italians now getting themselves into a leading group of four, but there is the main field. Nobody is going to let Taffi get 30 or 40 seconds up the road, because they know he is such a strong rider, and on a course like this he's capable of staying away for 30 or 40 kilometres.
Well, they're not going to give him any room at the moment as they start to chase him down the mountain here and then gradually try and regroup. This is an interesting looking group that's getting itself together now, but Taffi seems to be the man. He's the captain of the Squadra, and he's trying to get something set up because he knows they can't carry some of these names to the finish, least of all Jan Ulrich. And we haven't seen anything at all of Frankie Vandenbroek really since his crash when he was brought back into the field.
Chance there just to see a group of stragglers who are now round about ready to call it a day here at the World Championships, more than 3 minutes behind, but the pressure is certainly on at the front. But again, you see today, Phil, the Dutch are being very attentive. They're trying to keep themselves in close contact, trying to make sure that nothing gets off the front and puts them into a situation where they have to play a defensive role. There's Rolf Sorensen moving forward too today, riding for Denmark.
Another attack here from Alex Zuller. Goes over the shoulder of Martin Den Bakker. And this is the second time Zuller has launched an attack. He caused a little bit of consternation with the last one, and he's gone again now. He's being chased here by Rolf Aldag. Aldag, the workhorse for the very faithful workhorse too of Jan Ulrich. Rides on the same team as him, as well as being of the same nation. And he's got himself onto the tail of Alex Zuller.
Zuller really being very aggressive, surprisingly enough, attacking on the flattest part of the course here. But as one or two countries have different jerseys this year, in fact this is the new strip as well for the Spanish team going to the front. It looked very much as if that was Garcia Acosta trying to get himself off the front, but again shadowed by the Italians. This is obviously the Italian tactic today, to make sure that they have a man in at least every move that is going up the road.
And Garcia Acosta had a great Tour of Spain this year in the colours of Banesto. Banesto refound themselves in the Vuelta and were in the thick of the action. It was an excellent Tour of Spain, and I hope you'll all enjoy watching that one. But we're looking down now at the Elite Men's World Championship, over the halfway point, and still no decisive moves whatsoever here, because a lot of riders seem to have the measure of one another. And I have to say, Paul, that the Italian squad don't seem to have the grip on this race like we've seen in the past.
Certainly not the big Squadra Azzurri as it has been in the past. In fact, looking to the front there's an American rider. It looks like that must be Chan McRae. The American team not as strong as it has been at the World Championships in the last few years, but today, under the influence of the team manager Jim Okovits, who's in the American team car driving there, he will certainly try and get them to do the best that they can. It is a shame that the World Championships, I feel, is held nowadays in October, because some of the great riders from the middle of the season, riders like Lance Armstrong, feel that it's not possible to keep the season going long enough, and they in fact pull out of the international circuit before the end of the season. So I don't feel nowadays that the World Championships has a full representative of all the best riders in the world.
Well, the season is long and hard now for the riders, and they're chasing world ranking points all of the time, and I don't think it is now physically possible to stay on top form for the year. Of the 8 Americans starting today, Paul, by my reckoning now, there's only 2 of them left in. You're right, one is Chan McRae, who's having a great end of term, and also Levi Leipheimer is also in this group.
Wilfred Peters moving to the front there, the fantastic Belgian rider, one of the best domestiques on the circuit, rode a great Paris-Roubaix this year, again in a defensive role for the Mapei squad, and again taking them to a 1-2-3 in that great race in Roubaix Stadium.
Well, there's Chan McRae now trying to get in amongst it here. This is looking like another decisive attack, and Chan is carrying it on. Well, he's full of confidence, is Chan McRae. He had a wonderful Tour of Spain, and look at this now, trying to go clear. He's sort of grown up in the same parallel as Lance Armstrong. Lance has come up with the big results. Chan, in his own way, is still developing, and I think there's an awful lot in this young rider.
There certainly is. He's a great talent. He's just had a very good finish to the Tour of Spain, but today he's looking to try and put his name right up in the highlights, but that attack came to nothing. And moving forward now, wearing number 98, the man everybody expects to ride well for Spain. That's Odriozola leading them round the corner.
It's amazing how things have turned around. When Eddie Merckx retired in Belgium, there's been a 20-year or 30-year dearth of cyclists, but we've only just lost Miguel Indurain into retirement for Spain, and they've produced a whole succession of bike riders. They won the time trial this week for the first time with Gonzalez, and now they're at the front of the frame again today.
Mark Wouters there. This is in fact Andrea Taffy trying to organise the riders at the front of the group. Taffy is so certain he's going to get himself into a successful breakaway today that he's going after everything that moves. Now here's the man you were saying you hadn't seen very much of, Van Bont, moving to the back, picking up some bottles for Frank van den Broek, who wasn't too far away from him.
Well, that's interesting to see that Van den Broek still waiting to see how this race develops. Still a long way to go. The riders just settling in, but now they know they can forget all the shadow boxing now into the serious part of the World Championships, where only the strongest will survive the next couple of laps, and then the thinking will start again as to how to outwit those who have made the first selection.
Leading group of riders on the climb again in this group, Andrea Taffy. Max Chiandri there riding for Great Britain as well, very happy to be on a circuit like this, not too far away from his own home of Tuscany.
It looks as though Geert Van Bont, after that early escape with Zuller, is having a bit of bother at the back of this race now, and so too is the Danish rider Lars Mikkelsen, also slipping gently off the back. This is pressure time on the Torricelli.
The pressure coming from Switzerland. Switzerland on the front today, really with a great chance of a double. The defending champion Oscar Kamenzin, who is coming towards good form at the end of this season. He may well be able to come up with the goods, but they're not letting anybody really get too far up the road at the moment. And this leading group once again is about to be brought back into the fold.
Well, Dmitry Konishev is the Russian cyclist who's got himself into this group. The Swiss boys are really applying the pressure here. Whether Alex Zülle has said, look, let's keep going what he started, or whether this is a plan to try and put Kamenzin into a good position at the end. Maybe Zülle was just sent out there as a super domestique today and has got no intention of finishing the race.
Could well be the situation. Oscar Kamenzin and all the Swiss riders will have had a word this morning in the meeting, and they will know just exactly how they're riding. A glimpse there at the back of the field of Gorazd Stangele, the rider from Slovenia. One of a new group of Slovenian professionals is Daniel Nardello at the front.
Pete Zberg of Switzerland is the man hurting them here at the front, and again kicking once more. This man is a good sprinter. If he gets the finish to use it, he wipes up a lot of bunch sprints along with his brother Marcus.
Could be a family affair coming down to the finish. If there's a group of 25 or 30 riders left at the World Championships, I'm pretty sure that Marcus Zberg will be there, and that would give him a good crack at getting a victory. He's a very good sprinter.
Looking over his shoulder, it's just over the top of this climb where it really hurts. The last 2 kilometres is when it climbs up to its height and hurts a little bit. And there's Oscar Kamenzin, you see. It looks like Casagrande is with him. So there's a couple of favourites now beginning to feel the time is right to start thinning out the big bunch at the front. And Casagrande, who came with a very solid win in the Tour of Switzerland and then was bitterly disappointed when his team were not allowed into the Tour de France, and now being listed as the man on the Italian squad to possibly take the rainbow jersey.
It's a very early move, though, to go out on this course and put this kind of attack in. There's still an awful long way to go to the finish, and Cameron has decided he's going to go out, but a lot of work has been done to set this up by the Swiss. Coming across now, Martin Pediguero, Spanish rider, onto the back, but the big tempo is being made on the front by Francesco Casagrande, and they have opened up a serious gap. Now, I'm surprised to see the rest of the field, especially the Dutch, allowing a man like Casagrande to get away on the slopes of this climb.
Well, they've got to mark him. All the other boys in blue noticeable by their absence now that their leader has gone up into the fray. There's the confirmation of that leading group. And two likely favourites here. What a season Mark Wouters is having, Paul. Despite the blip when he crashed in the Tour de France and hurt himself, he continued his good form as soon as he made his return.
A great season for him, really, because he's been one of those riders who's been around for an awful long time, a very good domestique, worked hard for the team, and it all seemed to start early this year in the Pro Tour when he got a victory there. He left the Pro Tour, went across to the Tour of Luxembourg and came away with a victory there. But strange to see, in fact, it was a Belgian on the front of the main field who was nailing back that group, and I would have sat back and left the advantage to Mark Wouters, who I reckon is in pretty good form at the end of this season.
It doesn't seem to make sense. Mark Wouters himself, a Belgian, often thought of as a Dutchman, by the way, because he races on a Dutch team and with a name like Wouters, but even so, today we're looking for him in the blue of Belgium.
Chan McRae jumping across the gap there, trying to make sure that he doesn't get caught out. Basically, McRae here having to ride very much on his own and watch the tactics of the big nations present, the nations like Switzerland, Belgium and Italy. He's having to watch and see just exactly which way they're playing their tactics and try and ride across to stay with the front split, because he's got no chance of getting a team around him if he misses out on one of the moves.
Well, the Swiss man scurrying through on the inside, Mauro Gianetti. The Swiss are playing a real part in this World Championship, inspired obviously by Cameron's victory last year. As now still the boys here. This is Jerome, no, it's not, it's Michael Bogart, and he said Jerome Blyleven, but it's Michael Bogart who's also come up to the front here. He's got a one last chance of winning the World Cup in the Tour of Lombardy against Andre Schmil, because it looks like being a three-horse race with Van den Broek also in with a chance there if the dice falls in the right order at the finishing line.
It's going to be a very exciting end of the season for the World Cup, and it's been a magnificent World Cup this year. At the moment, though, Van den Broek very comfortably in the main field. In fact, it was Van den Broek, I think, who's put the pressure on at the front of that group to nail back the group with Wouters in there.
I'll tell you what, Paul, the new colours of Spain, to me, I start seeing German cyclists down there now, which is a bit confusing. Very similar to the old German colours. But even so, a lot of Spanish riders in this league group, and clearly they're on a high.
It is strange. Several countries changed their colours this year. In fact, the Germans not riding in their normal strip, they're riding in a blue and white strip.
Yeah.
And this Italian strip here also is very confusing when it's up against the German team strip as well.
And that's the Belgian strip, not to be confused with the Italian strip. Now, what's going on here? We've got a plot. This is David Rebellin. This is earlier, in fact. This was the crash by Rebellin. He fell very, very heavily in the early stage of the race after some 70 kilometres only. Clearly in pain. They put him back on his bike, but I can tell you he didn't continue. In fact, he went to hospital.
He won't be too happy with that either, because he's a local rider. In fact, he hails here from Verona and felt that this was a great possibility of him pulling on the Arc-en-Ciel jersey at the end of a very long stage. He won't be doing that today, and all he can hope now is that it's going to go to one of the other riders in the Squadra Azzurri.
Well, that's really sad, but then this professional cycling game isn't all fairy tales, and they can't all be happy endings like Lance Armstrong's winning the Tour de France. But we wish David Rebellin the best of luck, and you'll probably be watching and cheering for an Italian winner anyway in the next couple of hours of racing here in the World Championship. Well, another flurry of attacks has come to nothing, Paul, and this field is still some 60 strong. The average now just dipping for the first time below 41. It's about 40.8 kilometres an hour now, and that's a signal for Serpellini to have a go.
Well, this is a bit strange. The Italian tactics really aren't as what they normally are at a World Championships. They normally try and make sure that they have a group of 8 or 10 riders going clear with a couple of Italians in. And at the moment, they're sending off an awful lot of attacks one at a time to try and go off the front of this group, trying to toughen the race up. And you can see they have done that because there are not an awful lot of the 170 riders who started this race left in the race at the moment.
A little bit of Paris-Roubaix under the wheels here. That bell, by the way, is a spectator on the right-hand corner. It's not the last lap, unfortunately, for the riders. Just under 5 hours of cycling now, and a packed town here as they see the big riders go through. This is, of course, the highlight in Italy of the whole week of racing down here. And now the Italians are bound to be seen in the action, and that looked very much like Mr. Taffy again.
Well, it was. Taffy's gone out again. Taffy's certainly looking for the big move here today. He's attacked so many times already. I just don't know where he gets the energy and the enthusiasm to launch himself off the front of this pack. But he is racing on home turf. He's racing in front of an Italian crowd. And you can see a lot of anguish on many faces towards the back of that long line of riders there.
Well, you can never keep this man suppressed for very long. He rode an absolutely magical Paris-Roubaix with attack after attack, which gave him victory in the end. Will it happen today? He's been close in World Championships, but he's never got the medal he wanted. Yet.
Kurt van der Wouwer on the front for Belgium there, keeping the pace high. They today also have one sole lead, and that's Frank van den Broeke, surrounded by some very experienced riders. Men like Johan Museeuw, men like André Schmeel, who certainly will be doing everything to try and help the young Belgian hopeful.
Well, the field again looks as though it's all thinking out the next move. There's so many men of equal ability, or equal form, I should say, at this time of the year. And the names that we've talked about, like Ulrich and Van den Broeke, we still haven't seen do anything more than just close the gaps and sit there. No attack from them yet. They're letting everybody fire their shells first.
Those guys, the big names, the men who expect to win this race, will leave it all up to their teammates for the moment. They will leave it all to their teammates to do the pace-making at the front. We're on the 13th lap now of 16 laps. And still, Andrea Taffy feels that this could be the chance for him. And what a season that would be, Paris-Roubaix and the World Championships. But behind, they're going to have to start to get themselves organised, because you can't give Andrea Taffy too much of a lead on a course like this, because he doesn't weaken. He can just keep riding at the same pace all of the time.
Well, this is when he's brilliant over the beautiful River Adige there, in the centre of Verona. Now they're having to think this one through a little bit more. Certainly there'll be no reaction coming from the Italian rider on the front there, Gianni Falazin, as he rides up alongside Alex Zula, who's been a real animator in the race so far, but hasn't got him anywhere at all. Well, I suppose it has. It seems to at last have reduced the field to around about 60-65 cyclists there. Taffy is a great time trialist. Once out of sight, he'll go, and he'll never slow down. They'll have to come to him, because he'll never come back to them.
This is the hardest part of the course, in fact, to open up an advantage, because these are long, big boulevards through Verona, and then they go out onto the course and they reach the town of San Leonardo, and then they climb up to 280 meters from the summit of the Torricelli. It's a chance now to see the Germans riders coming up to the front. This is Rolf Aldag, the man who really is always on hand when Jan Ullrich needs him. All of the Germans today putting an awful lot of effort into making sure that there are no serious attacks, because I reckon Jan Ullrich has got a great chance on a course like this coming down to the last couple of laps. But we won't see the big names until 2 laps to go, I don't think, on the final slopes of this climb.
Then in that case we must assume that Taffy here is trying to just soften them up in favour of Casagrande. Also, Gianni Falazin is back in that group, and Marco Velo is there too. They've still got some plenty of the boys in blue back there, but it's becoming a 4 or 5 nation contest once again, with the Spanish, the Swiss, the Belgian, the Dutch and the Italian. And I suppose I should mention the French, because I've noticed Brochard down there, and also Jean-Cyril Robin.
Well, the French have not been as aggressive as they normally are in World Championships. Normally, the French tactics coming through to the Worlds is always to launch attack after attack on the slopes of the climb that every World Championship seems to have. But this year, they seem to be playing much more of a waiting game, leaving it up to the Swiss, who seem to be fairly certain this year that they've got a great chance of victory, either from Oscar Kamenzin or from Marcus Zerberg, if they can get a big bunch down to the finish line, because Zerberg is a very good sprint finisher. And I think that's another reason why we've seen a very omnipresent Swiss team at the front of this bunch.
Peter Farazijn is the rider leading at the moment for Belgium. Just got passed by his teammate there, and not to be confused with Gianni Farazin, because he's Italian, and he certainly won't be chasing his team captain right now, otherwise he will get an earful when he brings him back. But Andrea Tafi is just going to stay out there and see what happens now as we head towards the last 2 laps of the course, and he's about 45 kilometres from the finish here, which is not that far away, 28 miles or so to race. He's forged himself a lead of 45 seconds. It's the Belgians who are having to chase, so clearly Van den Broek is in there and having no problems with his accident very early on today. So it's their job to keep this race in contention. It's a chance for the Italian squadra to have a little rest behind and think what they're going to do with Casagrande. The thing is, the Italians are always the team to beat at every World Championship, but of course today it's on their own country turf. Then they're going to find it very tough to shake off these riders.
They're obviously very worried about this move, because look at that now, 4 Belgian riders moving up to the front, and a couple of those Belgian riders are probably going to be Mappé riders as well. Wilfred Peters could still well be in the action, as Johan Museeuw was as well, and normally they would ride alongside Andrea Tafi, but at the World Championships everybody rides for their respective nation, and they do have to chase down riders who on other occasions actually come from the same trade team.
Another one up there in second wheel at the moment, Kurt van der Wouwer, who had a wonderful Tour de France also this year for Lotto. One day they might have a winner there.
Mark Wouters up in second place with the orange helmet of Rabobank, but Taffy's having a hard time on this climb. The crowd are going absolutely crazy because they'll be getting all of the information. It's wild at the World Championships because all of the people at the side of the road here have small portable televisions that they can watch when the riders go out for the rest of the loop, and they come up alongside the road to watch them go past live before turning their faces back to the monitor and really living the whole race live.
Tafi, a popular person with the Tifosi, although he's only won 2 races this year, he always features heavily in them. As we watch here, Peter Farazijn set the pace here now, determined to get this race back up to the back wheel of this man here, and he's riding absolutely superbly is Andrea Tafi, and I'm sure being cheered all the way by his wife Gloria and his 2 children as they watch Dad on the telly.
Taffy is such a tough rider, a very strong man, always willing to attack, and it's surprising after so many attacks today that he's managed to get himself off the front, but he's not really building on the lead. If he's going to try and succeed a move like this, he should be really looking to open up a gap of 2 to 3 minutes at the moment, but you can see the Belgians have decided we're working for Van den Broek. There's a first glimpse there in about 6th position of Jan Ullrich, and not too far away also Francesco Casagrande was there.
Well, these are absolutely crucial moments now in any World Championship when you're on towards the last 2 laps. You can't afford now to not be with the move that goes. They know the move is going to come. Taffy surely doesn't dream of staying out there for the rest of this race. His best finish in the World Championships is 6th, which he did in 1996, and on that year he really could have so easily have been the win, but that indeed went to Johan Museeuw.
Chance there to see the little earpiece in the ear of Andrea Tafi. Nearly all of the teams now, all the top teams in the world, using some kind of two-way communication to get information from the team managers in the car, which I think does make it a little safer. Well, there's Wilfred Peters, and that's a shame. He's done his work for the day. He really is a tough domestique, always prepared to work for the team. He'll be going to take an early shower now, get the TV turned on in the hotel room, and just keep his fingers crossed for Van den Broek.
A strong man has done his job and hopes that Van den Broek can now finish it off. He's in that lead group. Well, the lead group, I suppose, is correct because the one man at the front hardly constitutes a group, but there they are. As we continue on, you've got a good idea there of how long this climb is. It's some 4 kilometres and gets tougher towards the top. Pace being set here by Dave Brylants, who's actually ridden very well, but there's trouble here for Mark Wouters, Paul. It looks like he's given up.
Difficult ride for Wouters. He was at the front a few moments ago, really giving it the full energy, trying to make sure that they could pull back Andrea Tafi. But you see, each of these teams today has decided, and it's a very risky thing to do, to invest in just one man. The Germans are investing everything in Jan Ullrich. The Belgians have decided we have got only one man to ride for today, and that's Frank Van den Broek. And what's happening is the teams are starting to become isolated, and towards the end we're going to see a very small group, I think, of riders with just the big names there.
Well, they're selling their men. Peters has gone, Wouters has gone, 2 great domestiques and hard workers. They've done their bit and blown away. Now it's left to Germany to set the pace here, and Switzerland not far away either. They're still looking very strong, the Swiss.
Well, Taffy had a maximum lead of over 45 seconds, but now it's starting to come down pretty rapidly, and it's all because of the tempo being set at the front of the main field on the slopes of this climb. You can see now that they've sent up some Germans to the front, and the Belgians now starting to disappear away from the front of that pack.
We've got Zeberg right up there for Switzerland now. He's just waiting to see what happens here now. Andrea Taffy is just keeping his same speed up, but there's so much pressure going on behind. Looking down that line, there's still a lot of riders in contention for this race, and they're bringing Taffy back as a group and not as individuals, and that wasn't quite the plan for Taffy. There they all are here, and some fine pacemaking being done up the slopes here by the German rider.
Very close in attention, Switzerland, but Taffy over the summit of the climb is still holding on. He's still managing to survive despite the fact there's an incredible pace in the main field behind, and there is the main field almost on his tail at the moment. But the speed that we've come up the climb this time, Phil, I have to say, has got rid of several riders out of the back of the group.
Well, the German, Paul, I think is Andreas Kleyer, who's done a tremendous piece of pacemaking to get those riders across. He sits up there and zips up his jersey. Taffy looks over his shoulder, must wonder where on earth they came from towards the end of that climb, but they're right on him now, and he's still, you see, going to dangle out there in the vain hope that somebody might just nip across the gap.
But now what is happening is the whole of the main field is coming past Andrea Taffy, but he has put a lot of pressure onto this bunch now, and a lot of riders will be gasping for breath. And this is the moment now, if you've got a little bit left in those legs, to launch the counter-attack. But I think everybody for the moment feels pretty happy to kick back and have a little bit of a respite before we go into the final couple of laps, because that is when the big decisions are going to be made.
Well, in fact, it wasn't Andreas Kleyer, it was Andreas Clouden, who was the rider who did all of the work to bring back that lead group, and he's still up at the front now as they come flipping over the top. And the Lampre rider there, Sir Marco Serpellini for Italy, also in that group as well. So a good piece of work by Taffy. Has to have hurt a lot of men, that.
Another big group of riders.
What's this? Where is he now?
Taffy has decided that he's going to keep going. He's not sitting up. He's decided to go out on the attack again. This is unbelievable. This guy, I think he must be mad, because he really has got to get out there after an incredible breakaway like that. He's put the hammer down again and said, right, I'm going to do it one more time, and this time they've let him go again. Well,
he's 33 years of age now. He turned professional back in 1989, Andrea Taffy. Started slowly, but since then he's picked up something like 26 victories as a pro, but he's certainly shaped a lot of race results as well. Look, he started to open the gap again now, and the riders in this group must be feeling pretty annoyed about that.
Except the Italians riding very close to the front. They'll be happy with that, because it's taking the pressure off the Italians. Sitting very close to the front was Francesco Casagrande, and what they want Taffy to do is keep the pressure on like this, because this will in fact then take a lot of pressure off them. They won't have to do any chasing at all, and the big leaders for Italy can sit back and leave the other teams to do all of the pacemaking. But Taffy, what a great performance. He really is a star rider. When he's on form, he wants to go out and attack, and that really is a rider like a rider from the old era of cycling, before people calculated down to the last minute second. Taffy just wants to go out there and race.
He does, and he loves to please the public. We've seen him entertain the British when he won the Rochester Grand Prix a couple of years ago, which was then a World Cup event. He's also been the national champion of Italy, which for an Italian is a very proud occasion. And he's won big races like the Tour of Lombardy and Paris-Brussels. So he knows what success is all about, but he's still not afraid to go out and make the race for somebody else. At the moment, he's doing it for the rest of the Italian squadron. There's Chan McRae down there. I think he is now the only American left in the event. I think Levi has gone off now, Levi Leipheimer. And so it's a very, very privileged group down there just now.
Interesting to note, just going down the main field there, Phil, there's an awful lot of Italians still left in this bike race. Despite the withdrawal of Davide Rebellin after that unfortunate crash to him in the early part of the event today, there is still a big number of Italians. So this is really working to their advantage, because it's putting pressure on the other teams. A lot of Germans have disappeared from that group. They've all been sacrificed today by Jan Ullrich, and I can only count about 4 German jerseys left in this group here. So already Jan Ullrich is starting to be isolated, and he's going to have to to respond to a lot of attacks in the latter part of this race, which I'm sure if we do catch back Andrea Tafi is going to come from the Italian squad.
Yeah, he's going to have to look for the right train, Ulrich, rather than make it obvious he's got the legs, because they know his form. They saw him in the time trial a couple of days ago, but they don't know how much effort he's given away in that time trial to win the gold medal, of course, but also the way he won the Tour of Spain this year. Strong in the mountains as well. He's going to have to wait, read the race and go with what should be a compact little group towards the end. As we're running down now towards the last 2 laps of the circuit, a little bit of word of advice here. Jean-Céline Robin in this lead group as well, while at the front another attack going again. Now this is Marco Velo. Always love that name when you're a cyclist. And now through the pits, not taking any food on board. This is another attack by the Azzurri.
What a great move. They really are on the attack now. They're racing on home turf. And in fact, today, for the first time as the team manager for France, is Charlie Berard, the rider who for many years rode for the Castorama team and the System U team, a great man who's looked after the French juniors and developed them for many years, and he's now moved in to replace Charlie Motte, who resigned his position as the team manager. 5 hours and 10 minutes in the saddle, and you can see, Phil, that it really is starting to crack up a lot now, and you can see a lot more presence of Italian jerseys towards the front of this bike race.
Well, there's your average speed of 40.7 kilometers an hour, so the pace is being maintained here. 5 hours and 10 minutes. We'll be just on 6 hours for the full distance, as the field now start to try and get on terms with Marco Velo, who is the time trial champion of Italy, by the way. A very good man against the watch.
Well, this is a good move here. There's a group of about 8 riders going clear and 3 Italians in that group, and I think Francesco Casagrande was just on the back. The reaction, though, coming from Michael Bogard, who's seen the danger, and the Belgian rider in there is the old Grand Master himself. I reckon Mr. Classics of the 1990s, Johan Museo.
Yeah, a brilliant bike race reader. You do a lot worse than to follow his wheel around the bike race. That's, of course, Paul, if you can keep up with him, because even though he's aging now, he can still read a bike race to absolute perfection.
And what a man. He too is one of the bike riders of the old days. He's a real tough man, ready to race in any kind of conditions, and it must have been very strange for him this year to come back to Paris-Roubaix, a race that almost cost him his life last year.
Another Italian got to the front to conjure with as well. Now Mauro Zanetti is up here too, so that's interesting, because now we're getting some new names. This is Marco Velo. Zanetti's on his wheel. This is a big push now by the boys in blue, and in fact our motorbike only just got down the corner first there, as we're getting quite a little selection coming forward now. This is still the Spanish guy Rubira. He's been very active today.
Spanish jerseys have been fairly active to the front of this race this afternoon, but they've not really been dominant. They've just been present, just hanging fire and letting the big teams like the Swiss and the Italians and the Belgians make the pace making. But this is a pretty good move now. 3 Italians in this leading group, and behind, really, the Belgians and the Dutch are going to have to respond. I did see the response coming from Michael Bogard, but I'm not sure yet whether he managed to get himself across to the leading group.
Well, the Italians are riding extremely well now. They're doing everything right at the moment. They've used their man Tafi to soften up the field, and now they're trying to make it feel worth his while for that attack by packing the men to the front and get some decisive split going. Sitting at the back here, Frank van den Broek. I really would not expect him to be at the back at this stage, Paul. He should be looking for the split now.
Well, he should be riding much closer to the front, unless he's going to take the risk of moving to the front only on the climbs. He will hope that that's where the major attacks are going to happen, but it is always a very risky thing to do, to sit at the back like this, because you can get caught up in an accident. He's already been in one crash this afternoon, and another one of the Italians is abandoning, so that is surprising. Sergio Barbero, but he was very dominant in the early part of this race, making it a tough event.
Well, they've lost a man there as he comes off, and he's going to have a little chat with the Rhine network, I think, down there as to why he's pulled out. He'll probably tell everybody he's done his job. There's a Belgian guy also, that's Mark Wouters. We saw Mark go off on the climb. He's reported into the pits now as another man, and an awful lot of riders have been coming into these pits in the last half hour. In fact, somewhere in the region of 50 riders have abandoned the race.
It's all because of the pressure on the front, and it's been very much a very heavy tempo every time we've gone up the climb of the Torricelli. You can see again the big reaction in the main field, and it's the German riders, and again it's Andreas Kloden on the front there. You should look at that though, Van den Broek sitting there nice and comfortably, allowing everybody else to make the pace, and he's moved very quickly to the front, from the back to the front, in the period of around about 100 meters.
It's good to see too Raymondus Rumsas riding there. halfway down the field, the Lithuanian. This is a very, very select group we're seeing now, Paul, and still there's a proliferation of riders from Italy and indeed from Switzerland and from Spain and from Belgium. The big nations.
The big nations, they always fire when it comes to the World Championships, but the biggest squad with the biggest morale every time they come to the Worlds is the Italians, which is why after that group was caught, another Italian is launching himself off the front here.
Great attacking riding. This is Farazin now having a go. And they're wonderful the way they do this, where attack after attack to try and break up the race. It just shows you the quality of the riders with them, though, because attack as they may, they're still pulling an awful lot of riders along in this group behind.
Well, now the Italians have decided they've had enough of the early part of the race, had enough of the scene setting. They want to get out there now and really put the hammer down. They've had several attacks. That was a good move just recently with 3 Italian riders getting into it, but they still want to launch the attacks. They still want to get out off the front.
This looks like, I was going to say it looks like Glenn Magnussen. We don't usually see him in his Swiss colours, of course. He's about to lead the US Postal team this year for a new squad next year. Nice attack from him. It looks as though it's all coming steadily back together again. Magnussen, normally a sprinter, specialising in winning a stage, at least one, in the Tour of Italy whenever he rides it. This was the odd year out for him. Alex Zuller again has gone, and Alex is so impressive when he starts. And look at the gap he's opened this time, and of course the Italians are trying to react.
Well, they're not reacting at all. They've just sat up because they cannot follow the pace of Alex Zuller. That was a great move. He waited for the attacks to come, and as soon as they slowed down, he came right up to the back wheel of Magnussen, straight by him, and he really has got the real coup de pedale today, the real stroke of the pedal. He's flicking it over nice and easily, and he's opening himself up a very smart gap. Now, this is surprising because Alex Zullerfield did an awful lot of work in the early part of this race, but I reckon today he feels he's on good form. The reaction coming from France, and that looks like Jean-Cyril Robin.
Indeed it is, and some 230 kilometres now under the wheels of these survivors. And I think that's the name of the game now, because an awful lot of riders have thrown in the towel. While it's gone after Alex Zuller, Robin, and it looks as though he's going to join him on the climb. Now this, I think, is going to be one of the last attacks. The others are going to have to try and follow.
It's put a real cat amongst the pigeons. There's 2 Swiss riders very close to the front there, but this will be ideal for a man like Markus Berg, the sprinter on the Swiss squad, because he can sit back now and just leave the advantage to their man at the front. Jean-Cyril Robin at the front, in fact, now has made contact with Alex Zuller, and these are 2 very good riders, especially for this part of the course. But look at the gear that Zuller is using, a very small gear, ticking over the pedals there on the slopes of this climb, and already they're building themselves up a pretty serious move. I think the Belgians have put too much work in too soon, and they have actually disappeared from the front of this group, but it's up to the Italians to in fact come up and take the chase. There's Frank van den Broek looking very comfortable there, moving to the front for the first time. On his shoulder there, Peter van Petegem, and the reaction has come from the Italians because they are the ones who are in dominant numbers in this race now, Phil, and Marco Velo has been sent to the front for Italy to chase down the 2 leaders.
Well, Robin rode extremely well in the new race, the Trans-Canada race this year, which slipped onto the international calendar and before hardly anybody knew it. Attracted a lot of big names, and he also finished 2nd overall in that event. And now he's got himself, with that form, into what could be a decisive move here. Zuller, who's been playing around with lone attacks all day, is still on the attack now, and time is running out for the others.
Alex Zuller really having a great end of the season, although his Tour of Spain was not so fantastic. He has proved that he has got himself into ideal conditions for the World Championships, which is being defended by Switzerland, as Oscar Kamenzin was the man who won this title last year, and he's still in with a very good chance of winning again this year. They're at an advantage now, 12 seconds over the group, and the group being led very much by the Italians, who certainly want to bring this race back together, because in the group they've still got Francesco Casagrande, who many think is the #1 favourite there. That was Marco Velo on the front, putting the pressure on, trying to pull it all back together, but the race now is becoming much more tactical.
And the Italians are again on the receiving end here as they try to move up. Number 96 there was Martin Pereguero, and he's a Spanish rider. There's a few Spanish riders still in this lead group here as they now decide what they're going to do. Number 8 is Felice Puttini, the Swiss rider. And number 20 there is Andre Schmil. He's probably thinking of his upcoming Tour of Lombardy and the defence of the World Cup. It would be nice to go into that race though wearing the rainbow jersey, I'm sure about that. And Laurent Brochard on the right as well, and the Italian rider there is Farazin. This is a very select group of some good names. But what can they do about this attack? This is going to be a tough climb this time up. These two are sailing up it, but all of the work being done by Zula, at least when our cameras go there. I've not seen Robin in the lead since he hooked up with Alex Zula.
Although I do have to say, Jean-Cyril Robin looks very comfortable there, sitting very nicely on the wheel of Alex Zula, riding perfectly, sitting well back on the saddle, nice and powerful, keeping himself in an ideal position. He's coming to the front now as they get towards the summit of this climb, but he does look relaxed and he does look in good condition. And I have to say that race across Canada obviously did him an awful lot of good, because he's come here with good condition. He was very unlucky to lose the Trans-Canada race. In fact, it went down to the final time trial. Having led the race for an awful long time, he had to bow out because of his inability to put in a good performance at the last minute.
And we must not forget, of course, last year when he rode for US Postal, he finished 6th in the Tour de France, slipping into the result there, hardly noticed. And so Robin is a quality rider. He was, when he was a junior, a world record holder as well. Now, those two riders clear. 13 seconds, hardly a winning gap yet, as they continue over the top of the climb, and the group behind are going to leave the majority of the chasing, I think, now to the Italians. They know that at some stage they will make a move. They have to make a move, because this is Italy.
The Italians will not let that group go off the front. They will fight as hard as they can to try and pull it back. Still, Marco Velo is on the front. You see, there's a bit strange this, because the Italians are trying to chase down, but it's the fact that they're on the climb at the moment that they don't have 3 or 4 riders at the front trying to organise a chase. They've sent Marco Velo up there to keep